Yay. Iman just has to sit on someone's lap.
Have a great event.
Bye, thank you.
I wanted to tell you that I made these recipe booklets, and what we've been doing is they're from the book, and then when we get a book signed, they get one.
Okay. Let me write that down. So if people already bought the book, should they come back?
Yes, I want it. I didn't get one. No worries. It's so lovely that your son is here. He's so
He's so funny. Like, he really wants to participate in these things.
Is that your mom?
Yes. He's like, oh, my mom's a person. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Okay, we still have a couple of people trickling in. We're going to get started, though. We're super excited. So thank you all for coming in person, for those that are joining us online. If you haven't been to one of our book events or author events, we have several of these types of events a week. Sign up for our mailing list or follow us on Instagram to learn more about those events. And tonight, typically what we do is we have about 30 minutes of conversation, and then we'll take some questions from the crowd, and then we will be doing a bit of book signing. So you're welcome to grab afterwards your copy, purchase your copy if you don't already have one, and get a signature on it. Okay, so without further ado, please welcome our special guest for the night. We have Marjan Kamali, born in Turkey to Iranian parents. Spent her childhood in Kenya, Germany, Turkey, Iran, and the United States. She holds degrees from UC Berkeley, Columbia University, and New York University. She is the 2022 recipient of the National Endowment for the Arts Creative Writing Award. She is the author of The Lion Women of Tehran, The Stationery Shop, and Together Tea. Marjan lives with her husband in the Boston area, and they have 2 children. Please also welcome Shideh. Etaat is an Iranian-American writer living in LA. She received her MFA in creative writing from San Francisco State University. Her work has been published in Tremors, New Fiction by Iranian Americans, Day One, Fog Lifter, Nowruz Journal, and My Shadow is My Skin, Voices from the Iranian Diaspora. Rana June and the One and Only Now is her first book. When she isn't busy writing, you can find her helping her 6-year-old son how to navigate life. All right.
Welcome, everyone. First of all, yes, thank you. I'm very proud of all of you for making it. I know there's so many things going on, and to have your presence here is super special, I know, for Marjan and for myself. And I'm honored to introduce you to this lovely human and this amazing book, her 3rd book she's written. I'll tell you what people are saying about this book, because it is really, really special, and I know you all know that. So The Lion Women of Tehran is an epic story of friendship, betrayal, and redemption set against 3 transformative decades in Tehran, Iran. It explores how profoundly we are shaped by those we meet when we are young, and the way love and courage transforms our lives. People magazine calls it, this is a big deal, an evocative read and a powerful portrait of friendship, feminism, and political activism. Oprah Daily calls it elegant, a tender, beautifully written examination of 2 women and their choices over more than 30 years. a really cool author I know named Shideh Etaat has said this about the book. With this masterful, heart-centered novel, Marjan Kamali has crafted a deeply honest look at the true meaning of friendship. Through Homa and Ellie, we see the nuances of a perfectly imperfect love that withstands class differences, personal trauma, jealousy, war, and revolution. Their souls are forever intertwined, and as a reader, it's an honor to bear witness. This book made me incredibly proud to be an Iranian woman, a lion woman too. So please welcome Marjan. Okay, so I love getting like the energy and the vibe of the story in the room. So I'm just going to ask you to read maybe for a few minutes or tell us about this book a little bit.
Yes, thank you all for coming. I echo Shideh. This is just amazing. I know there's a lot going on. We're super grateful to see such a great turnout. I will do a reading from the book just to give you a flavor of the story, and then we will be in conversation, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. But let me set it up for you. So as Shideh said, this is a story of friendship. It's about two girls who meet when they're 7 years old in Tehran in 1950. And they come from very different backgrounds and stations in life. And we see them go through the joys of childhood, the ups and downs of adolescence. They go off to university together. And their friendship is going along swimmingly until one of them betrays the other. And then decades later, they reconnect in America. So the story takes place in the 50s, 60s, 70s in Iran, early 80s in New York, and another time period I can't tell you because it's a spoiler. But all along, one of the friends, Homa, is fighting. She's fighting for Iranian women to be free. So the section I'd like to read from you, and this is a brand new baby. It's not even a week old yet. So still reading it from it feels very strange for me. This is the third time I'm literally reading out loud from it. But that's not true because when I wrote it, I read it out.
Oh, okay. So it's a fourth time.
Yes, the fourth time. So I'm going to read a little scene from the middle of the story. This takes place in March 1963. Our two friends are now 20 years old. They're college students. And it's a very special night. It's right before the Persian New Year. All right. Chapter 19, March 1963. The moon hung like a carcanet in the purple sky, and the air smelled of wood smoke and roasted nuts. Parents, siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins, and neighbors all gathered in the streets. Some of us ate sweet beets we'd bought from the beet seller's cart. Others tossed sugared almonds into their mouths. On the last Tuesday night before the spring equinox brought in the Persian New Year, we lit bonfires. It was tradition to run toward the flames and jump over them to release bad energy and bring in goodness and vitality for the new year. Now this avenue, this part of the night belonged to us. Students from Tehran University, Polytechnic University, and Bazargani University stood around in groups. Most of us girls wore trousers. I hopped in place, trying to stay warm in my navy pea coat, scarf, and deep crimson leather gloves. Next to me, Mehdad, that's her fiance, panted, bent over with his hands on his knees. Making the leap is really not that hard, Ellie, he said, in between gulps of breath. Anticipating it is scarier than when you're actually doing it. In the chilly night air, I rubbed my gloved hands together. Smoke caught in my throat and filled my lungs. I both craved the warmth of the fire and dreaded it. What if my shoe grazed the tip of a flame and my entire body lit ablaze? And why wasn't Homa here? Why did she care more about her Marxist meetings than about our own Persian traditions? The line moved up. Soon it would be my turn. I felt I'd made a big mistake and looked at the sidelines to find Mehdad. But beyond a few feet, it was too hazy to see. A layer of smoky film made the world indefinite.
The sound of laughter, youthful merriment from the belief that the world is set up for your amusement, your pleasure, your plans, carried into a new year on a wind so dry it almost crackled. I was suddenly barreled into and knocked over. Have you tried it already, Ellie? She wore black pants and her usual no-frills black coat. Her hair circled her face in a wild, curly mane. Her voice was excited and filled with joy. I got up and hugged her. She smelled like hookah smoke. What happened? Your communist meeting got too boring? The meeting was fine, Homa nudged her hip against mine, but I didn't want to miss out on this night with you. She wore no gloves. I thought she should have put her hair up. I worried it would catch on fire when she jumped. But she just grabbed my gloved hand in her bare one. We'll both jump. You want to go first? No, we'll jump together. There's no way. We'll collide. It'll block our momentum. We had moved up in line as we spoke. Suddenly we were next. Homa tightened her hold on my hand and took off. I had no choice but to run with her. Together we rushed toward the flames until the wind changed from chilly to scorching and heat spread across my face. It felt like we would dive into the blaze and run right through the fire. Out of habit, out of tradition, out of the memory in my genes from my ancestors, I shouted at the top of my lungs the traditional chant of Sorkhia Azman Zardia Manasto, asking the flames to give me their energy and vibrancy and to take away my weariness and dullness. My voice was not alone. Homa's was in sync with mine. We were almost up against the fire now. We had to rush into it headlong or jump. We jumped. Time slowed down. My body buzzed itself calm. The blood running through me was charged. Floating, suspended in the air, all the rest of it blacked out. It was just us up there, flying, flames practically licking at our shoes, the air hazy and dreamy, smoke swirling into our hair, flecks of fire landing on our ankles softly as fireflies. We rid ourselves of the toxic and shed burdens from the past year to enter our new year cleansed. Cleansed by the smoke of the fire, cleansed by the rush of adrenaline that coursed through our limbs, cleansed by the soaring leap. Hovering above everything like that, the world felt completely ours. And then we thudded onto our knees. My wrist turned backward, Homo's body was splayed. With effort, she staggered onto all fours and helped me up. Together we stood upright and stumbled out of the way so the next person could land behind us. We walked until we located the shape of Mehrdad on the sidelines. Homa swung my arm up in victory. I inhaled the night air, amazed and slap-happy at our unaccountable flight, unaware that it would be our last.
What a good excerpt. Okay, so my favorite question of all time to ask writers, because it takes so long for a book to be made, is like, what was the spark for you? How did this begin?
Yes, it does take a long time, as we both
Yes.
know. Luckily, though, I've learned to not take 13 years the way I did with my first novel. But this being the third book, the stationery shop, my second book had come out. And by then I had become aware that you're supposed to write another book.
Okay, see, I haven't learned that yet.
Yes, that's apparently what you're supposed to do. So with Together Tea, after I finished, I was so thrilled and I thought I did it. But then there was another one that people expected. And so with this one, I had kind of gotten that down, and I'd actually started the third book, and it was about 100 pages into it when the pandemic began, and we were in lockdown. And like many people in lockdown, and maybe many people currently, I was scrolling Instagram, and I came across these posts from a friend of mine. And she and I were friends not just on Instagram, but once upon a time, we had been best friends in Tehran. And we had gone to elementary school together, and we'd played together almost every day. We'd done our homework, and we knew each other's moms, and I started to see just how different our lives now were. I was this author in America. She was working for a human rights organization in Iran. And I thought about how the friends we make when we're young truly shape us. And I knew that's the book I wanted to write. So I chucked those other
Oh my
pages.
God.
Deleted.
So courageous.
I know. No, I have them. I still have them. In case I need them.
Does that friend know about this?
She doesn't know, but she follows me on Instagram, so she knows there's a book out. Because if you follow me on Instagram,
You know, there's one
no
out.
way you don't know that. I don't think she knows about her role in it.
Wow.
I'm so scared to reveal that because I cherish that we have this connection again, and I just don't want to rock the boat.
We won't tell her.
Yeah. Don't tell her.
Okay. Can we talk about this word lion woman or the phrase and what that means? If you don't know, Persians are very poetic. So in Farsi, we say Shirzan. What does this mean to you?
Yeah, so Shirzan literally translates, for those of you who speak Persian, to lion, women. And I grew up hearing this phrase, and I was incredibly empowered by it because it means strong, fierce women who are unstoppable, who take no nonsense from anybody. And for me, it felt very natural. It felt like a natural fit because that's the women I knew. That's my mom, that's my grandma's, every woman in my family kind of. And then it was a shock to me to learn that there's this other side or stereotype of Iranian women that's submissive and that they're very like oppressed and quiet. And I was like, no, we are the lion women. That's how I was raised. So I'm super happy to embrace that in this book. And Homa and Ellie, when they're little and they talk about the kinds of women they like to grow up to be, they talk about becoming lion women.
I love that. We talked about friendship a little bit. Should we keep talking about it? Okay. Yeah. So I had an interesting experience. I was rereading this book, preparing for this. I was doing my homework.
That's right.
And I was at the mall with my son who's over there. And I saw from the distance a good friend from when I was little. And we kind of locked eyes and we smiled. And that was it. And it just made, that's not going to happen with every friend I run into, but with this particular friend that happened. And it just made me think about how people come in our lives and then they leave. And then sometimes they're on the periphery and sometimes they stay. So can you talk about how the friendships we make when we're young shape us, even if they end or continue?
Yeah, that's exactly sort of the essence of what I was trying to capture with the friendship of Ellie and Homa, because I don't think friendships have to continue for that influence to continue in your life. And I think especially childhood friends you make when you're very young, they shape who you are because you're still forming as a person. And a lot of the things that you learn to like or not like or do for the first time, you learn through that friend. And I really feel that even when the friendship ends, the influence continues. And friendship breakups are just as heart-wrenching as romantic ones. And sometimes when our friendships end, we move on to a different season. That's fine. Sometimes friendships are rekindled, and that's what I was really interested in. And I don't know if any of you have had this experience, but you can have not seen a really good friend in years. But then let's say you do get together. I mean, you guys passed one another in the mall, but you can get together in a coffee shop and start talking, and it's like no time has passed. And you just slip back into that banter, that camaraderie. And there's a comfort that friendship brings because the friends we choose, that's the key word, we're choosing them in our lives. And it's very different than family members where you get what you get.
You said it. I didn't say it. Okay, so I don't know if you know this. I attempted to write a historical fiction novel, and I failed. Or no, I didn't fail. I wrote it. It just never got published.
Okay.
It was really hard. It was really, really hard. Especially having never been to Iran. It was very hard. So I'm curious how much research you do for a book like this, because when I'm reading your books, I'm trusting you from the first page.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you ever feel this pressure of getting it wrong, or if because it's fiction, how much space are you giving yourself to use your imagination?
Yeah, with historical fiction, even though it's fiction, I get to make up the characters and I get to make up the story. I get to make up maybe the house in which they live, but I can't make up historical facts. That's kind of one of the weird rules about historical fiction. So, with all three books, they're set against a historical event that occurred in Iran that's very real and against real life incidents, but the books get fact checked. So Simon and Schuster does all this fact checking, and they come back to me and they'll say things like, "Oh, you wrote Hafez Street. It was actually Hafez Avenue."
Wow.
That's the level of detail we get into. So I take the research super seriously because it's important to get the true facts right. And then we have fact checkers, and I also interview a lot of people who
Okay,
lived
that's what
during
I
the
was
time.
going to ask you.
Yeah, the interviewing was super helpful, more helpful than reading any nonfiction account or watching like a movie set at that time. Interviewing true people, and I was in a position of privilege because I was able to interview people who had lived in Iran then, and particularly talk to my parents at great length.
So interesting.
Yeah. There is one tiny thing I got wrong on the line, Women of Tehran, and I will go to my grave upset about that. It's just 1 year. It's a typo, everybody. But like that's the level of detail. We pour over it, and I can't even say somebody was wearing an outfit that they wouldn't have been wearing.
Yeah.
Because if someone who lived then reads it,
Yeah.
they'll write to me. And also it takes them out of the dream. So we get all those facts right.
Wow.
We try to.
Okay. Good to know.
Mm-hmm. And your book will come back. I think I know the one you're talking
Yeah,
about.
we'll see.
Yeah,
We'll see.
yeah.
Okay, so some of my favorite moments when I'm writing are moments that there's a sense of surprise where even I don't know what the characters are going to do. So I'm wondering, when you were writing this, were there elements of surprise, either the characters or the story itself?
Always. I think that's why I write, for that level of surprise, because I don't plot in advance. So when I start the story, I don't know what's going to happen. I discover it as I'm writing it. I discover it when my fingers are on the keyboard, or really, honestly, with the pen, because I do write longhand, and I know I'm a dinosaur, but I love to write longhand. And the elements of surprise are what keep me going. So I love that feeling when I'm writing and I'm suddenly like, oh, what? And in the stationery shop, I can give spoilers for the stationery shop, because if you haven't read it yet, that's on you. In the stationery shop, a main character dies halfway through. Except, sorry, friendies. I'm not going to say who, though. I know, we're now doing the Line Women of Tehran book. I could never say that at a book.
You guys get up to speed.
Yeah. But that shocked me. It shocked me. I didn't want him to die. And I remember as he was dying, I was like, how is this happening?
Oh my God.
But he needed to. So
kill your darlings, huh?
Yeah, you kill a couple of people.
Oh my God.
But that's what keeps you going as a writer, because it makes it fun for you too, to discover that. To have the story take you places that you never thought it would go. And sometimes it can be incredibly sad, and as a writer, you're shocked.
Amazing. Okay, so I'm realizing more and more, the older and wiser that I get,
Yes,
that Iranians in the diaspora have such different stories of immigration. So someone who stayed for the revolution, the Iran-Iraq War and then left, or escaped, like my mom sitting right there, has a very different story than someone who left before that, packed a suitcase, got on an airplane. So I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your personal experience and how that might shape the stories you're telling.
Yeah, so I actually didn't live in Iran very long.
Okay.
So I only lived in Iran between the ages of 2 and 5, and then again between 9 and 10 and a half. But that second time that I lived there was at a very pivotal time in its history. It was right after the revolution, right after. We were the fools who went back. Do you know what I'm saying? 'Cause there was this small period of time when everybody was like, it's going to be a democracy.
Yeah.
And then I was there for the first year and a half of the war. And that truly shaped me. So I left Iran when I was 10 without saying goodbye to that best friend. And I arrived in New York City. And I felt like the girl who got away because during the war, we were all in the basement bomb shelters on the regular. Bombs were falling. I was reading a lot in the basement. I think that's where a lot of my love of reading really developed because those writers were taking me away, transporting me. But when I came to America, I had this feeling that I'm the one who got away and I'd better make something of myself. There was a lot of survivor's guilt. So it really shaped my story telling desires because I write about Iran. And it's a country I spent very little time with, but it's a country my parents were obsessed with. And so I felt I had a duty to learn about this country. And writing these books helped satiate my own curiosity. Because in my case, like you said, others grew up there, were raised there. For me, it always felt like an unfinished story. So I wanted to learn more about it.
I love that. Now you're continuing the story with your books.
Yes, I'm trying to learn.
I love it. Okay. So I know you talk about this in the acknowledgments a little bit, but most people haven't read the book yet. So I'm curious, at what point in writing the book did the woman life freedom movement in Iran happen? How did this monumental revolution led by lion women impact you personally and the words you were writing? Or like if anything shifted because of that?
Yeah, I was about halfway done with this book when the women life freedom movement began. And for those of you who may not know, that was a movement. It was sparked when a real woman in Iran named Mahsa Jina Amini, she was arrested for wearing improper hijab and later killed. And the injustice, just the horror, it was a culmination. It was like the straw that broke the camel's back. People poured out into the street, mostly women and girls. And like so many Iranians in the diaspora, I watched with hope. I watched with heartbreak as these women took to the streets. And I was astounded by their courage. And I felt I had to honor them. So it did affect the end of the book in a way, like, you sit there as a writer and you know what I mean. You're trying to grapple with the plot and how do I bring these certain elements together and what should I do? And then in a way, history helped write the end of the book.
Wow.
Yeah.
So another surprise, huh?
Yeah, like big time. This is not for the week. This kind of project. Yeah, it was a harrowing surprise. Yeah.
Okay, so last question from me.
Yes.
I want to talk about how we met.
Yes.
So I haven't seen you in 13 years.
Yeah.
13 years.
Yeah. The last time we saw each other.
Yeah, we both look the same though.
Exactly. We actually look much younger.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So we met at Breadloaf Writing Conference. We were 3 Iranians there. The other one was Jasmine Darznik. And I remember we had a moment because you hadn't published any books yet. And I was very far from that as well. And you told me that your manuscripts were not like publishers were saying Iran wasn't in anymore and stories about Iran weren't in anymore, which is a ridiculous notion that a whole people can just not be in and their stories. So I'm wondering, what would you want to tell that version of yourself who is hearing that, or anyone today who's trying to write stories that are not in?
I want to talk to that version of myself. I want to talk to that version of yourself.
Yes.
So it was at Breadloaf. I met with an editor. I paid extra to have this private meeting with an editor. Foolish me. And I told her that was before my first book. I told her I'm writing this book, Together Tea, Iranian American Mother-Daughter. And she listened to me and she said, oh, well, books about Iran had their moment. And they had their moment in 2001 because we had Funny in Farsi, we had Persepolis, and we had Reading Lolita in Tehran. And she said, so we did it, you know? And I was so shocked that she was saying this to me. And she said, well, we have the 3. And I was like, well, we don't get more than 3. And then, you know, she was very transparent. She said, no, I mean, they had their moment and now it's gone. And then I remember going back to my room and crying. And then I think I was in the kitchen area when you ran into me and you said, what's wrong? And I told you what she said. And you were trying to comfort me. Well, obviously she was wrong. So to the people struggling, I would say, please don't listen to that nonsense.
And don't pay someone to tell you.
Yeah, especially don't pay extra
at least for
money
free
for like that kind of advice. I want to tell young Shideh, look at this.
Oh.
Yes. So Rana June and the one and only now. And I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
Because I remember after Breadloaf, well, first of all, at Breadloaf, she was a superstar, let me tell you. She stood behind the mic, took over that entire hall. We were spellbound. And then after Breadloaf, you were working, and it was hard. And there are people in publishing who do think we have 3 books about Iran, and so we're good. But you did this, and this is, for those of you who haven't read it, just a gorgeous exploration of, I feel like I would sum it up as how love can outlast loss, and just a great exploration of grief and friendship and love of music and love of poetry. And it's a beautiful book. So I'm glad you didn't listen to that nonsense.
Yes.
And I'm glad I didn't listen to that nonsense.
Yay, us.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have some time if you guys have questions for this incredible human. Yes.
I have a question. The relationship of Ella and her mom, I was wondering if that was based on a particular real-life mother-daughter relationship, and how much of Ella's mom might be in you as well.
In you or your mom?
Okay. I love that. I love that. We're being live streamed, so I'm going to be diplomatic. You know what? You make up the characters, right? So as a writer, I made them up. But any writer who tells you that the characters are just entirely made up is lying. You always borrow from people you know. And Ella's mom, for those of you who haven't read the book, is problematic. She's so problematic. She is a narcissist, and she thinks she's doing what's best for her daughter, but she isn't really, as we know, until we learn more about her past. Sometimes when I write these mother characters, people think it's about my mom, but it's not about my mom. But it is about how motherhood can go so awry out of the best of intentions. So I am writing about mothers, myself included, who want the best for their children. They want the absolute best. But sometimes what you want as a mother and what you think is the best for the child isn't what's best for them, and you end up causing them great harm. So that was a fascinating character to write. She's so incredibly frustrating. There were moments where I just wanted to just like strangle her. I didn't kill her. I did not kill her. She had her redemption scene at Bloomingdale's. Yes. Yeah, I borrowed from, certain things I've seen and experienced for sure.
You talked about how friendship breakups are really hard. I actually thought a lot about that, and I think why it's so hard is because, in a relationship, you pack your stuff or the other person packs the stuff, and it's kind of like over. I think in friendships that hardly ever happens. And I wonder, like, having your friendship rekindled and having written the book, has your definition and your view of friendship changed?
That's a great question. And you're so right. Like, we have so many heartbreak songs for romantic relationships. And we have so many things to look to. We can read ancient Persian poetry. You can listen to current pop music. There's almost like a template for heartbreak when it comes to romantic love. But when it comes to a friendship breakup, there's very little out there. Writing this book helped me realize that some friendships don't end, even if they've ended. Do you know what I mean? I mean, you may not see that person anymore. You may not be in touch with them anymore. You may not be hanging out with them anymore, but they're a part of you. They helped form who you are. And that's what I learned writing this book, which I didn't expect to learn at all. But it was a good lesson. Thank you.
Questions? Oh, hi.
Hey, less of a question, but just more of a thank you. Two things. One, I'm half Persian. My dad's from Iran and never had the chance to go, but you have let me live in this kind of dream world where I've been able to imagine sights, sounds, everything that I can. So I appreciate that. And it just hits different when it's coming from someone outside of your family. So I've always appreciated how you've kind of let my imagination go wild with that. So thank you. The other thing, I first discovered you in 2020 during COVID, and like many people was in a dark place. I had experienced my own breakup with my Bahman a few years prior to that, and out of pride, we just went years and years without speaking to each other. And as soon as I closed the stationery shop, I reached out to him, and happy to report we just celebrated our 1-year wedding. Seriously, thank you. It's just like a reminder that I've always been a hopeless romantic, but your words truly like shaped my life and gave me the courage to really listen to my heart. So,
Wow.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is that like the best thing anyone said to you?
So by far, best comment of the book. No one can top that. And I'm going to name your first child. No, I'm kidding. That is a beautiful story. That is an absolutely beautiful and inspiring story. And I'm deeply moved. Thank you so much.
Of course, thank you.
Oh my gosh. You never know. So Shideh, June, you were asking about the writers who want to give up and, that terrible advice that had you and I followed it way back then. So you never know what your words can do. So that's amazing.
Yeah, keep writing.
Thank you.
There's something special.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. Let's see.
Does anyone dare?
Yeah, follow that. How can we follow that?
You don't have to tell me that I changed your life. You could just ask.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Should we?
So so now what we're gonna do is we have books to sign, both Shideh and I. So I'm super excited to sit next to you again after 13 years.
Oh my God.
And this time I'm not crying, which is helpful. And for the Lion Women of Tehran, because it's its little birthday week, my publisher made, and because there's so much food in the book, my publisher made these recipe booklets. So yes, it's so cute. Anyone who has their book signed is going to get one. and it's 4 recipes really. It could be so many more, but in it I tell you what that recipe meant to me in my life, and also what it meant to Ellie and Homa.
That's so sweet.
So yes.
I have 6 tote bags too to add to the mix.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just gonna say thank you to Zibby's. What a cool freaking bookstore we're in right now. Thank you, Marjan, for coming all the way from Boston to be here with us.
Thank you, Shideh, for being my partner in crime.
My
fellow
honor.
lion woman.
My
Yeah.
honor.
Fellow lion woman. Thank you, my love.
Okay, buy some books, guys. That was so good. Oh my God, her comments.
I'm feeling so bad that apparently we must have been read them at the same time too.
Oh,
I met Jasmine last summer.
Oh, hey. Wait, let me get the tote bags.